Hey everyone, Kyle with Andrew Hilton Wine and Spirits here to tell you about our Hey everyone, Kyle with Andrew Hilton Wine and Spirits here to tell you about our upcoming beer tasting for Wednesday, November the 9th. We've got a little bit of a different beer style here. We're going to do Doppelbock. Now, we've kind of circled around doing it before because they tend to be very strong, but with this cold weather, I'm kind of in the mood for like a big, rich, dark, malty beer, and Doppelbock certainly delivers. Now, the term means double bock or double strong. These are a Bavarian tradition, and they tend to be about cola brown, very rich. They can be very spicy. And we have some brewed right here in Alberta from Blindman out of their Foeder Lager series, as well as, of course, Fahr out of Turner Valley, who are German brewer specialists. But I wanted to put them up against a couple of the classics, and there is no more classic Doppelbock on earth than Ayinger Celebrator. This is the beer that started it all. This was actually out of stock when we did our focus on Ayinger Brewing, but it just came back, so I threw it in. And then Paulaner Salvator, which is another classic German Doppelbock. So we'll talk a little history, we'll have a bit of a head-to-head between Alberta and Germany, and we'll just have some nice roasty beers on a very cold night. I hope you'll join us for that one.
Media Boutique.
Hello everyone, welcome to our Doppelbock tasting, and I want to walk back a thing that I said during the promo where I talked about how Ayinger Celebrator was the original Doppelbock. No, it's not. That's Paulaner Salvator. I was very incorrect. So, welcome. It's a very cold Wednesday night. We have some very strong dark lagers in front of us tonight. Our tasting order this evening is the Fahr and the Paulaner. Aaron and I went back and forth a couple times on this one to pick this. If you think I have this backwards, please let me know, because this one was controversial. Then we'll go to the Blindman, Foeder-aged Doppelbock, and finally the Ayinger Celebrator. So let's get some Fahr in our glasses, and we'll talk a little tiny bit about Doppelbock. Probably more than I needed, considering it's 7.5% alcohol. Yes. Oh,
Pass the grog.
Pass the grog. Oh yeah, Aaron's back off the wagon. So here we go.
Just lightly indulging here.
So yes, lightly. So Fahr Brewing, if you're not familiar, is a very German-focused brewery based in Turner Valley, Alberta. Started in 2015 by Johann Fahr. My best Fahr memory is being invited up on a beer bus trip, which turned into absolute hell, by Cooley Brewing, because they wanted to go in this head-to-head pint-for-pint competition against Fahr at Craft Beer Market in Calgary, and people were pole dancing on the bus and slamming into me, and everything was terrible, and it was hell. So not Fahr's fault by any means, but that was kind of my introduction to the brewery, and it was very annoying because I was actually way more interested in what Fahr was doing than what Cooley was doing, because they kept having people slam into me off a stripper pole, and I really wanted to try their beer, but I actually couldn't. So me and a couple of people from this event walked down the block to a different bar and tried a bunch of the Fahr stuff on tap so we wouldn't wreck Cooley's draft numbers, and then we came back later, much later, 5 minutes before the bus left later, and it was a lovely evening overall. So Fahr is based out of Turner Valley, but let's talk a little bit about Doppelbock in general. Doppel means double or double strong. Bock is a little more interesting. The term bock is actually a place name. So this style, this dark lager style, comes originally from 14th century Saxony, from the city of Einbeck. And when you take Saxon dialect to Bavarian dialect, Einbeck becomes Einbock. They started brewing this style in Bavaria, and Einbock means billy goat, so it became something of the goat beer, which is where we end up with these little tiny goat figurine things that used to hang around the neck of every bottle of Ayinger Celebrator. You can see, depending on Aaron's camera focus here, you can see the word Celebrator at the bottom there. Gonna have to go super close. There you go. Unfortunately, the bottles don't come with these anymore. I have seen porcelain little goats like this that used to come out, and they've been plastic for the time that I've been in the beer industry, and apparently they're now no more. As of late 2021, early 2022, the Celebrator goat is no more. So we bid farewell to the cute little goat Christmas ornament, and it is canonically a Christmas ornament. That's what it's there for. So
Like a wax cap or a
well,
cork or something.
they used to be just hung around the neck of every bottle of Celebrator.
around the lip,
Like,
okay, yeah,
and like if you bought a 4-pack, you got 4 of these little things. So yeah, not anymore, unfortunately.
Right. Stay there out.
Too much money.
Oh, sorry, just leave that
Do
there.
you want to
Okay.
see these in the color spectrum, or are they all going to be too dark?
They're all going to be roughly the same color. The only one that's a bit lighter, I think, is the Paulaner. But so anyway, the city of Einbeck becomes Einbach because of the local Bavarian dialect. It becomes, you know, the goat beer in the same way that we refer to like Big Rock Traditional Ale as Trad, or Pilsner as Vitamin P, or, you know, I was going to make a really, really sick burn on a couple of breweries, but I'm just not going to because it's too mean. I'm in a good mood. I'm not going to. That's cruel. Trying to be nicer. Choking hazard. Yeah, in the same way Kinder Toy is. Sure. Only stupid children will choke on it.
All children are dummies.
That's fair. Okay, so what should we expect from a Doppelbock, regardless of whether it's from Alberta or Germany? We should expect relatively high alcohol. This is the lowest here at 6.7. Everything else is over 7% alcohol. They should all be dark. Now, some are kind of in the brown ale category. Some get right up into being almost as dark as a porter. All of those are traditional. This is a very broad style, as is Bock in general. Other than the general Bock, which is kind of a lower alcohol, 4 to 5.5% dark lager, we can get into like Maibock, which is a much paler, hoppier beer. We've tasted a Maibock or Maibock with the Les Trois Mousquetaires version, and it was spicy and pretty and blonde and very light and fresh. That was really fun. When we did the Ayinger Bavarian tasting, you know, Aaron, you could give me some cues there. When we did the Ayinger Bavarian tasting, we did the Weizenbock from them. And I also wanted to point out that when we talk about things like you can have a Maibock that's also Doppelbock. It would just be a strong Maibock. Just like with Weizenbock, you can have a Weizen Doppelbock like the Schneider Aventinus here that I'm holding in my hands while Aaron's looking at his TikTok and should be zooming in on this beer. Aaron. So yeah, I mean, the point I'm making here is this is one of those things where you can have a Doppelbock or a Maibock or a Weizenbock, and they can be some overlap there. So you can have a Mai Doppelbock or a Weizen Doppelbock. Doppelbock's just a, if you want to think of it like as the imperial term, you can have Imperial IPA or Imperial Porter or Imperial Wheat Ale. That's kind of what the Doppel is used for in the German tradition. So yes, you can have a Doppelbock, you can have a Doppel Weizenbock, or I've never seen one, but in theory you could have a Doppel Maibock. So I want to just point that out very briefly. The final style is Eastbock, not a style we see very often here. This is basically you start out by brewing a Doppelbock, and then you freeze it, and then lift out the ice, leaving the alcohol behind, and then continue doing that until you end up with something much, much stronger. All of the last 20 years in terms of competitions for the world's strongest beer, to the point where they got up to 57.8% in a Brewdog collaboration. Those are all done Eastbock style. It's called fractional freeze distillation. I've had a couple of those. They're universally awful, so no one should ever drink those. So that's a little bit of history. Let's jump straight in with the Fahr Doppelbock, because what lovely beer we have in our glasses right here. It's chocolatey, it's spicy.
It's kind of sweet.
It's moderately sweet because they're not going for a completely attenuated fermentation here. They're leaving some sweetness behind. It's yeasty, but it's not banana yeasty. And I really appreciate the lack of hard banana esters in these beers because I find that very tiring. And you get it in the mouth and it's like, it's halfway between, it's all of the weight and the presence and the richness of a stout or a porter, but that hard, sharp, smoky roast character is absent. This is very much like a Belgian double or a Belgian quad, in that the alcohol is higher, there is a darkness and richness and sweetness to the beer, but the malt is de-bittered. There isn't that hard, sharp roastiness to it. It's not a smoky, ashy, coffee-ish beer. You could certainly see some very pretty coffee characteristics in this. Like if you went and got a fairly blonde roast coffee done as a pour over where the bitterness was reduced as far as possible and it really enhanced those pretty notes, this kind of reminds me of a very, very good pour over, but it's not traditionally like, you know, Starbucks coffee, Tim Hortons coffee, gas station coffee roastiness. It doesn't have that component to it, which makes it a very interesting, unique beer style, because it's all the alcohol and richness and balance and body, and it's very warming on a cold night like this, but it doesn't have the roast, which I quite like. Let's quickly roll through the comments here, see what we've got. Lots of good evenings. Please bring in some more Fahr. Kevin, I'm bloody trying, mate. There's no Fahr to buy at Connect. There's nothing. I can't get the Heffa. I can't get the Dunkel. I can't get the Hellas. I could get the Doppelbock, but I think that was just about the only thing I could get. There is no Fahr at Connect. I can't get any. I'm trying, but to a certain point, Fahr kind of has to make some beer for me to buy. So I'm doing my best. I'm doing my part. The rest is on the brewery. Anyone get a citrusy note? Ooh, now there's an interesting question. I do, and it's like candied orange peel. Or you could even say marmalade, but it's like a sugared orange rind sort of thing. It's not orange juice, it's not lemon, it's not lime. It's like very sugary orange. But it's absolutely there and great catch. And I think that orange is kind of leaning a tiny bit into fresh ginger as well. But I wouldn't have picked that up unless you'd said something. That's really good. That's an absolute delight. But it's also 7.5% alcohol, so I should probably move on. Well, shut up, Sky. I don't have a dump bin here. Thanks, Sky. Okay, so let's move on to Paulaner Salvator. And let's dig a little bit more into the history of Doppelbocks. So, bock is floating around in Bavaria. It's a known style. It's starting to pick up some little variations in Maibock or Weizenbock. But in the 17th century, there's an order of monks, not dissimilar from the Jesuits or from the friars. And these are the followers of St. Francis of Paula, who are known as Paulaners. Now, this brewery, and this is somewhat disputed, this brewery bills itself as the successor of those monks. They can prove an unbroken chain going back to these Paulaner monks, going back to like the 17th century, specifically February 24th, 1634 is their claimed founding date. And the reason they use that date is they actually have an extant letter of all the independent breweries in Munich writing to the Lord Mayor or City Council or whatever they had in 1634 and saying, hey, this group of monks are wrecking our business. They're brewing for themselves and then they're giving out for a pittance whatever they have left over to the poor. We got to stop that. We are selling cheap beer to the poor. What the hell are they doing giving away their beer for almost free? This is madness. And that letter is still preserved at the Paulaner Brewery, and that's what they claim as their original founding date. Now, as you can imagine, a lot's happened between 1634 and today, and whether Paulaner is still the same brewery as was founded by those Paulaner monks way back when, that's a little bit dubious. However, what's not dubious is that Salvator was the very first name ever given to a Doppelbock in Germany. It was certainly the first commercial Doppelbock, to the point where there are Well, there's convention now where every Doppelbock or most Doppelbocks that are made are given this ator suffix. So, you know, the original Salvator, this is procrastinator, this is celebrator. There's other ones like optimator, maximator, bejuvenator, consecrator, devastator. There's lots. This beer has kind of led to this ator suffix on most Doppelbocks out there, but this is the real original OG, produced in Munich. The spiritual, if not necessarily literal, successor of the original producers of a Doppelbock. I mean, this is the real taste in the real place. This doesn't come from New York City. This is if we're referencing anything here, this is kind of the one all of these others have to riff off of. And it's quite a bit lighter, isn't it? Like, this was fully into the brown ale porter category. This looks more like an amber or maybe a West Coast double IPA with this bright caramel color. Now again, this is a style where color will vary quite widely across the different beers, because this has to be a dark-ish lager with a bit of residual sweetness that's fairly strong. I also believe this is the strongest beer tonight at, yeah, 7.9. This is definitely our strongest beer tonight. Ooh. Now the alcohol in this, and again, this is where we're going to get into the debate of which should have come first. I will point out that this doesn't taste as good after the Fahr, but the Fahr tastes kind of watery after the 7.9% alcohol in this one. So we could have gone either way here. I settled on this because I think that with the higher alcohol, the Salvator follows the Fahr better than the Fahr follows the Paulaner. But if you want to go the other direction, that's entirely on you. This was a tough choice. There's a flavor in here that reminds me of steam whistle. I mean, there's a bit of like a fading hop, not quite skunky hop, but like a well-cooked, somewhat dying off hop aroma here. And I'm kind of struggling what else I'd be coming up with to be steam whistle-y here. So do tell me exactly what you mean by steam whistle here, because I'm struggling with that comparison. I will say that this is brighter, it's fresher, it's perhaps more candied. Like here we got chocolate and candied orange and like rich sweetness. Here there's definitely a sweetness, but that higher alcohol kind of makes this come off hotter. I definitely notice the alcohol here, both in my tongue and where it hits me right here in the old cheekbones. This is very pretty, but it's much lighter, it's much fresher, it's much brighter. This seems like the sort of thing that I would, again, if I were at an Oktoberfest and somebody passed me a liter of 7.9% beer, which really isn't that much, it's 2 of these, but it feels like a lot when you're drinking a giant one. I could see drinking a liter of this more easily, despite the higher alcohol, because this feels more thoughtful. This feels like something I want to drink in front of a fire, at home, with a book, where I can think about it. This, as much as it's kind of the original beer, it seems a bit simpler. And if this really is, in theory, the original taste, the original flavor from 1634, all of these other beers are darker. All these beers are a little lower alcohol. All these beers are more chocolatey. I'm curious how much the Doppelbock style has drifted, within Paulaner, because there's absolutely going to be some stylistic drift, because if nothing else, the nature of the ingredients that went into this beer. Even if you said, okay, this beer uses nothing but 2-row barley, Pilsner, and caramel number 9. And when we use Hallertauer Mittelfrüh and Saaz hops, all of those ingredients over the last 500 years have changed dramatically from what they were before. So the beer, even if you kept the recipe exactly scrupulously the same, it would not be the same beer because the ingredient drift would have changed it. But it's interesting that this beer is so much paler and so much brighter and a little bit stronger than all the other examples. So let's keep that in mind as we move through. And yeah, I think it's a bit of the touch of skunk for me. And I think that's what I was trying to couch as fading hops without saying the word skunk. And yes, for an almost 8% beer, this is very smooth. But I think as we move through, the alcohol here is going to become very obvious for a lot of people. I'll also point out that this is one of the 6 breweries that's actually invited to the Munich Oktoberfest, because I didn't know this, but the big Oktoberfest, when you go to Oktoberfest in Germany, you're going to the Munich Oktoberfest. Munich is the home of Bavarian beer. Well, you have to actually have your brewery in Munich. A little bit outside of Munich doesn't count. Ayinger is only about 25, 30 kilometers outside of Munich. They don't get to go. So it's only the 6 breweries, big breweries, that are based in Munich that make their beer the old-fashioned Reinheitsgebot way that actually got to go to Munich Oktoberfest. So Paulaner is one of the 6. Not a beer for you, you get raisins? Well, raisins going to be a very common thread here, so I'm very sorry, Deirdre. I will say I don't think I like that nearly as well as I like the Fahr. Let's move on to Blindman. Now, Blindman, of course, old friends of the channel. This is somebody we've talked about a lot. And this is part of their Foeder Aged Lager series, which I have a little bit of a love and hate relationship with. I love the beers. I've loved almost all of the beers. I wasn't a huge fan of the berried pills. I hate that they recycle all their barcodes over and over and over, which creates absolute inventory hell for me. So let's judge it on what's inside the can, not the absolute inventory hell that it causes me otherwise. Much darker in color, but in the nose it also comes off much darker. I get figs, I get coffee and chocolate again, I get a lot of sweetness, particularly milk chocolate. I actually get a real glossettes like movie theater chocolate covered raisins thing off of this. I get a little tiny bit of something that might be white pepper, and I'm really trying to find the wood, the foeder age, because if you're going to age it in the foeder, what are you doing? 1, you're trying to draw out a little bit of wood flavor. 2, you're trying to introduce more oxygen so the beer picks up a slightly oxidative flavor to it, which will introduce more complexity as long as that oxidation is very carefully controlled. And I certainly get a lightly oxidative note here, something that kind of comes off as fruit roll-up or something a little tiny bit balsamic vinegary, but very, very soft. It's not dominating, it's not ruining the beer, it's there in the background, adding a touch of complexity. Yeah, dark chocolate, glossettes. The mouth is very, very firm. Like, this is lower alcohol than this, and this, I think the alcohol is supported by the base beer very, very well. Here, I think the alcohol kind of runs the show, and I'm not loving that. We put the Fahr first, because it was lower alcohol. Both of these, I think, are stronger beers than the Paulaner, which it's kind of like when we put the Blindman New England IPA up against kind of more contemporary ones, and the classic OG got pushed around a little tiny bit. The Paulaner here, I'm not feeling it. This is really nice, though. Yeah, the wood shows up in the mouth. It doesn't show up so much in the nose. The nose is port, sherry, that's the oxidation. It's glossette raisins, it's a little bit of chocolate. I get a very tea-like tannin here, which I think is, after you swallow, is anybody else getting that super drying thing on their tongue? That's gotta be tannin. I think that's tannin being pulled out of the wood from the foeders, because there's not a lot of other things that do that in your mouth. tannin is quite distinct when you're used to it, and I think that has to be tannin cleaning the mouth, and that has to be coming from the wood. Getting a real black cherry thing as this warms up too. Are we getting more of the Blindman Coffee Stout? Yes, we absolutely will be. Well, I'm basing that entirely off I hope Connect has more, but we are definitely going to order more of the Blindman Coffee Stout. I know we ordered more today for Friday. Assuming that Blindman has some to sell us, we will have more. Yeah, it has a lovely acidic, clean bite. Like this finishes like root beer with teeth. It starts out very like friendly and sweet and light and fluffy, and then it gets to the back of your palate and it's like, no, this is serious business. I quite like that about this. It's very tart and it's very structured. I will say this, one of the reasons I don't drink a lot of things like Doppelbock or Imperial Stouts is they can come off a little unstructured. When we talk about a Pilsner or like a Helles Lager or a Dortmunder, they tend to be very structured. Here's the acidic component, here's a little bit of hopping, here's the grain bill. Everything just kind of makes sense. When you start getting into, and let's just throw all the things under the bus again, when you get to a high alcohol Imperial Stout with everything they threw at all the things like pistachio and cherry and whipped cream and sadness, you end up with a beer that maybe loses its point. It doesn't have a hard hop backbone or something that just, it ties everything together. This does. This is a big, sweet, could be somewhat sloppy lager, but that tartness ties it together and keeps it focused, and I really appreciate that. And yeah, that leather taste for me is almost coming off as like instant coffee more than anything else. Like, yeah, it's definitely got that coffee crystals sort of finish for me.
I said it before and I'll say it again. It gets me a little bit with that dill.
Yeah, you did get dill out of this. You're right. And I did initially, but I'm not getting it now. Yeah. But yeah, you definitely got dill and you're still getting it. Gosh, that finish is so damn dry, and I really like it. I also like they went with the naming convention with the A-Tor. I think that's fun. So this would be where we'd put our promo for next week. But, of course, we're not doing a beer tasting next week. We are doing a Scotch tasting next week. We are doing a ticketed Scotch tasting. We have Lee Hansen, ex-barrel hunter, well, still kind of a barrel hunter, coming down and doing a Hunter Lang tasting with us, where we're going to taste 6 different single malt whiskeys going up to a Jura 20-something-year-old. I think it's a 24-year-old. We're going to do those 6 whiskeys with a presentation. Going to be a really fun night. Tickets for that are $30, and like all our tastings, it's just a cost recovery basis. If we weren't doing such expensive Scotch, we could make the ticket price cheaper, but we're not making anything on it. This is just a come drink Scotch on us. It's going to be a really great night. So that's coming up on Wednesday the 16th, and we'll see you out for that. Beer tastings will pick up right after that on the 23rd. What's the topic going to be? Good question. I'm kind of leaning Dortmunder. I don't know if I can talk about this beer yet, but there's a brand new beer for some breweries. It's a collab. It's some breweries that we like, and we're hoping we can pour that. So we'll see if we can build a Dortmunder tasting around that. Don't know if there's enough Dortmunders in the market, but we'd like to do that. We'll see how it goes. Are we putting beer advents again this year? Yes. I spent 3.5 hours on Monday wrapping individual cans of beer in wrapping paper. You're welcome. But yes, we'll be rolling them out sometime this weekend. There'll be 2 batches, one coming out about Remembrance Day, one coming out, well, what's 24 by 24? 288?
Oh,
Yeah. Um, it takes the amount of time it takes to wrap that many cans of beer in wrapping paper. That's when our second batch will be coming out. So it took about 3 weeks to wrap this one up. So probably November 11th, and then maybe the last week in November will be our 48 individual calendars. There are also some Scotch calendars. I wasn't going to mention these tonight, but they happen to be sitting right here. These are some spirits calendars. Yeah, so these are by Drinks by the Dram. Sky with the camera work here. So this is Drinks by the Dram. This is their Explorers edition. This is their Whiskey Explorer. So you get whiskeys from around the world. I'll be very honest, we tried really hard to get into this with a razor blade and Mike's gentle fingers to find out what was actually in it. We couldn't, not without taking the whole damn thing apart. They've been very, very judicious with their super glue, so we could not in fact get into it. So there's this one here, and then there's also if I can get this stupid thing out of here, there's also a Scotch whiskey advent calendar by the same people. Prices are, I think, $170 and $250. We got 5 of each. We'll have these as well. We still have 2 of our wine advent calendars from last year. We still have 2 Prosecco advent calendars we got a couple weeks ago. 88, I don't know if I should be talking about it, but 88 is going to do a 12 Days of Christmas mini advent calendar, and we'll have some of those. If advent calendars are your game, we are definitely going to have stuff for you. But very short answer, yes, we are doing our own advent calendars again. Yes, they're going to be awesome. But yes, expect them about this weekend because the cans are finally all wrapped. Just toss it in a box. Okay, this was a thing that we all talked about last year, is the way we did it last time. Yes, they all had different colored tops and you could tell. You know, when you pulled one out, you could tell what all the other, like, it's kind of like Minesweeper, where you take the center one, you can tell what the other 9 beers around it are. I don't like that. That's not a mystery. That's not fun. That's lame. We're not doing that again. Lessons learned from last year. We're not doing that again, where you can just tell what the other beers around it are. So we are individually, God help us, wrapping, that's a terrible way to phrase that, wrapping every single can so that you can't tell what they are, because that makes the advent calendar more fun, because you genuinely don't know. Now, this is by no means the first Scotch advent calendar we've ever had. This is just the one we can get this year. Jonathan, of course, from Secret Spirits, had his own advent calendar. We carried it every year from the year he started. But Jonathan, unfortunately, is no longer doing his calendar, so we're going with these ones instead. Okay, Ayinger, Celebrator. We all love Ayinger. Their Jahrhundert Dortmunder was the whole reason we did that Bavarian tasting a little while ago. We love this brewery. They come with these, well, used to come with the little goats. We love the little goats. They're adorable. This actually, for anyone who doesn't know, this has been hanging off the corner of our singles beer fridge for like 5 years, and I went and snagged it off the corner of the fridge just for tonight. It's going to go back up in its home after this. But yeah. We are definitely doing some fun stuff. Fun stuff. I mean, you can always sell me tubes of paper. Mezcal calendar.
Calendar.
Well,
Mezcal.
Aaron, would you be horribly offended if I unplugged for a sec?
Jesus God.
I know. You'll be horribly offended.
Oh, that's rude.
I know. Very rude. Okay, so someone asked about Mez calendar. And you know what? No, we're not doing a full calendar. We're absolutely not. That is not a real thing that's happening. Sorry, I'm distracted by my own voice. But Mezcal de Rumbas did actually do kind of a mini Mezcal advent calendar thing. They sold us a 24-pack of mixed mezcals, 6 total mezcals, 4 bottles of each, and they're all different. Yeah, this is really fun. It's unfortunate because it's white writing on a clear bottle on a very complex background. So you kind of have to hold it on a weird angle to see what's inside. So this is the Dorumbus Tamaulipas, which is Mezcal Funkiana, Univitana, and Americana, pit roasted with black oak, processed through a mechanical mill, fermented in stainless with wild yeast, and then on a stainless still, which should be very legible, but is absolutely not. But they've got all these little 200 ml tasters of mezcal that we now have up by the till, so you can just be like, oh yeah, I want to try a really cool mezcal. And you don't have to fork out like $100+ for a bottle of like Rey Campero or similar. You can just get a little 200 to take home and try, and they're all really interesting. And there's one of these, and I can't remember exactly which one it is, where it's not actually certified as mezcal because it comes from such a dangerous province of Mexico that the actual mezcal inspectors won't go to that province because they're afraid of being killed by a cartel. So it's completely like decertified mezcal. It's just Mexican agave spirit because the inspectors won't go there because it's so dangerous. So it's a really, really great mezcal in little tiny bottles for like $25. They're great stocking stuffers. They're kind of a great mini calendar. I'm not going to break them up into proper calendars because like I have a limited amount of time in this life. I like to do more with it than make tiny mezcal calendars. But yeah, we kind of have a Mez calendar. I didn't do any of the work for it. This was done by the rep. It's a really great idea. You can get all of them here. We got 3 cases of these, so in theory we'll have 12 of each. Obviously we'll get some repeat business on some. Some will sell out quicker than others. But right now you can get all 6 if anyone wants to have like their own mini mezcal calendar. We thought these were fun as hell. We booked everything we could get. So yes, love this. Yes. And I also jumped the tasting to the last beer because here is my Ayinger Celebrator. Minus Tiny Goat, and oh god, the nose on this beer. I love Ayinger so much. Yes, I know, like, these guys are like, oh, 1634, and Weihenstephaner has this claim to being the oldest brewery on earth, and these guys are the new kids on the block. Like, 1877, that's brand new. That's 1877 in Bavaria might as well be 1977, but I do love me some Ayinger, and they make some really, really top-notch beer. This is their Celebrator Doppelbock. We normally sell it in 4 packs of small bottles like this, or we sell it in the big 750 mils. Oh, I like this. It's cola, it's Tootsie Roll, it's caramel, it's toffee. This reminds me of the Fahr, but louder. Like, this has a little less alcohol, but it's just bigger, and that's not a slap on the Fahr at all. The Fahr is very subtle, and I think it shows better in the mouth than in the nose. This is all nose. This is nose for days. Oh yeah, yeah, that's really good. I also like how old school the label is. I just like this beer, always have. I will also say for this, one of the reasons I know this beer so well is when I was just dipping my toe into craft beer, and I started chasing like the rate beer top 50, which was a terribly stupid idea of me, because all of it was like crazy mail order shit that you had to stay in line for. This stayed in like the top 20 for years. It might still be in the rate beer top 50, not because it's rare, not because it's something that's barrel aged or made with magic unicorn tears or something. It's just incredible. It's commonly available, but it's just there in the top 50 because how do you take anything away from this beer? This is just wonderful. So for me, rankings are hard. I'm going to give the Ayinger a 1 and the Fahr a 2. I'm actually going to put them on their own tier. I think these two are really similar to each other in terms of quality. I think that they're definitely a step above the Blindman, which stands in its own tier. It's good, but I don't think it approaches the complexity of either of these. I love how tart it is. I love how serious it is. I love how structured it is. But I really like these just a little bit more. The Paulaner, yes, it's the original. It's the day one, if you believe their hype. It's the original recipe from 34. It's fine. It's a Doppelbock. It exists. But, okay, there are lineups I could put this in where it would win. Fair, yes, but we didn't put it in just any lineup. We put it up against Ayinger and Blindman and Fahr. We put it up against really serious competition, and in this competition, it just doesn't do it for me. Aaron, your rankings.
Yep. 4, 2, 3, 4. 4, 2, 4, 2. Nope. 4, 4, 1.
Oh, sorry.
Where are we?
Yeah. Let's put them back in the original order.
Yeah.
That's wildly unfair to you.
There we go. Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah.
So you are.
Yeah. 4, 1, 2, 3.
You're putting the Blindman last. All right.
I would do the same, but that's
You're the same.
Paulaner, it reminded me of my grandma's angel food cake. So
Why does it remind you of Grandma's Angel food cake? I'm curious.
it had that weird pound cake flavor on the finish.
Pound cake.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
That's fascinating.
So yeah, it edged out for me.
Celebrator is great.
Yeah, that celebrator does it for me. Craig is the opposite. 1, 3, 2, 4. Wow, Craig hated celebrator. Man, that Craig. Never can tell with that
Just
guy.
hated it. You know, I could tell he just hated it.
Yeah, you can. No, Kevin says he knows 3 of these really well, but when tasting together, the tastes are odd. And that's kind of why we do these in a group, is like, on its face, I would recommend any of these. If you came in and said, hey, I want a really great Doppelbock, okay, these are the only 4 Doppelbocks I carry. But I could also make a case for any of these. If you said, well, I want a Doppelbock that's really traditional, like I'm studying for my BJCP, I want to taste like the original one, Paulaner, no question. If you came and said, well, I really like IPAs, but I'm trying to get into like Doppelbocks, okay, if you're into IPAs, you're used to a ton of bitterness, a ton of acidity, I say you probably like the Blindman best because it has a ton of acidity coming from that oak casking. And if you came and said, I just want a Doppelbock, I don't care, just sell me a Doppelbock, I'd probably recommend these two because I think they're, on their face, very, very nice beers. Pound cake and burned plums. I hate when I'm missing something because I feel like I'm missing out. It feels like that couple of weeks after I had COVID and everyone else was tasting the beer and I wasn't.
What beer would you recommend to someone that came in and said, I hate Doppelbocks, convince me to like them?
The Ayinger. It's lower alcohol. It's very soft. It's very likable. If you don't like this, you probably won't like Doppelbock. And the main reason I say is the alcohol. This is the lowest alcohol of all the beers. And yet it's also the one we did last because I think it has a lot of flavor. The Fahr is right there because it's what, 7.1? 7.5. So it's still big. I feel like the alcohol is going to distract here and the wood is going to distract here. If someone's trying to get their first Doppelbock, I'd still go here. And maybe that's my own bias of just finding them really likable and soft, but Yeah, I'm torn on this one because it's again four really good beers, but unlike the dark lagers, I am willing to rank these because I think there's a bigger spectrum of quality here because there are things I like and things I don't like about all of them. All right. Well, I think we'll call it there, folks. This has been a lot of fun. I won't see you next week unless you come in for our whiskey tasting with Lee Hansen. Other than that, we will see you on the 23rd, and we will be doing something. I'm hoping Dortmunder. I really want to see if we can make a Dortmunder tasting happen. If not, we'll do something else kind of seasonally appropriate. Otherwise, I'm Kyle. This has been Sky. That's Aaron, who's wearing his toque like it's a beret. It's very strange. It's very distracting. Yeah, so that's what we're living with is that. That's what I have to look at, everyone. It's wonderful doing this job. But yeah, we'll see you in a couple of weeks. Have a wonderful rest of your night. Stay warm, stay safe. Good night.